Hey guys, this is Downphoenix, and welcome back to another game review. Today we're going to be checking out Energy Invasion for the Nintendo Switch, a cheap and quick-to-play indie game. Is it good though? Is it worth playing? We're about to find out. So Energy Invasion is a nifty idea. It is essentially a Breakout type game. Now everybody knows what Breakout is. Breakout is an old school type of game. Basically it's Pong playing against a wall as opposed to playing Pong against another player. The catch with this game though is the fact that you actually have the ability to shoot missiles out of your Pong ball. As a matter of fact, that's what you have to do to destroy the blocks, is to shoot them with those missiles. The ball itself typically is not going to be able to knock down the blocks, so you have to be able to shoot them down with missiles. Now, it might seem like that might make the game a little too easy, but the game also throws in some enemies of their own. Now, you can't directly hurt the enemies, but the enemies can shoot projectiles at you, or they can also shoot projectiles at your ball or the missiles that it shoots out in order to deflect them and, get them off course. So there is some challenge involved with this game that you have to consider. There's actually 3 different types of gameplay that's available in this game. There are 3 different modes of play. There is Invasion mode, which is the one that I mentioned, the one where you have to shoot the blocks and you have other blocks trying to shoot you. There is also Linear mode, which doesn't have any kind of enemies whatsoever, but instead the blocks will slowly shift down, kind of in a way like Space Invaders, except they don't shift left or right, they just shift down very slowly. And then finally there is Endless mode, which is a mix-up of the Invasion mode, where it just keeps going and going and going until you run out of lives. So those are the different modes that this game has to offer. If it doesn't seem like this game has a lot to offer, it's because it really is a short game. There really is not a lot to it. After all, this game is only $3 on the Nintendo Switch, so it's a very cheap game, one of the cheapest that you'll find on the system. But how is it exactly? Is it worth that money? Well, for one, this game has a really good soundtrack, and it really helps to add to the gameplay. It really helps give you that sense of an exotic feeling that this game can have with the soundtrack. Not to mention the trippy graphics. The graphics remind me quite a lot of stuff like Tempest 2000 and whatever, You have a lot of flashing colors and a lot of particle effects and things like that. So that stuff's really cool. And then, of course, the base concept of the game is really interesting as well. I think it's a nice concept. Definitely something a bit different from the typical Breakout style of gameplay. But at the same time, it's very familiar for anybody that is a fan of Breakout games. Now, that being said, there are some problems that I do want to bring up with the game. First of all, the variety in the levels is pretty low. I mean, with the Invasion mode and the Linear mode both, they have 25 stages each, and there really is not a lot of variation in the levels. Really, the only difference is the way they place the blocks and things like that. There's not any change like in the backgrounds or anything like that. There's not any power-ups that you can pick up. Now, it does seem like that you randomly get power-ups, like sometimes your paddle will get bigger and stuff like that, which is actually a bad thing in Invasion mode because it makes you an easier target to hit. But that said, there are some power-ups, but it seems like it's kind of random. There's not really any good way to trigger them, at least as far as I can tell. The mechanics and the physics of the ball and the paddle just feel a little bit off. They're not like 100% there. They're like 90-95% there. It's hard to explain unless you actually play the game. But sometimes it seems like the collision detection with the paddle and the ball are just a little bit off. So if you're the kind of player that wants to hit those very edge shots in order to get the best deflections possible, be warned. Sometimes you might think that you have the hit, but the ball will actually pass through the paddle. Or at least that's what it seemed like to me. Maybe I just am not the best at the game. That's entirely possible. But I don't know. It just didn't feel perfect to me. It felt like it was just a little bit off. I think that's something that could easily be fine-tuned. And I think that would definitely make the game better, if you could have more control over how you actually hit the ball. You know, if you actually felt like you're more in control over the physics and the collision and things like that. It just felt a tiny bit off. Another thing that bothered me is the linear mode. There was no explanation at all as to the loss conditions of that. I figured it was just like Invasion without being attacked. And so I was like, well, shit, this is too easy. And I was getting to a point where I was getting like 30 lives. Then all of a sudden the game was just like, game over. I'm like, why? Why is there a game over? And that's when I figured out that once the blocks, they get to a certain position, that's when it's game over. But the game doesn't give you any explanation behind that. Even though there is a how to play section, which you figure would explain how the different modes of the game works. So that's kind of a minor flaw, because once I understood the loss conditions, you know, I was able to adjust play and have a better understanding of how that worked. But I think just a better explanation towards the players in the how to play section could have alleviated some of those frustrations. Also, even though I really do like the colorful graphics that this game has, there's just not much variety in the visuals themselves. Like the way the blocks look and things like that. They look very, very simple. Like it's pretty much designed to look like in a fancy Atari game, is the best way I can put it, you know, which I guess some people may really be into that aesthetic. And I think it's a nice aesthetic. I think it's just a little too simple in today's standards. I think that the visual design should be stepped up a little bit more. After all, the game has some fancy artwork for the game cover art, so why not add a little bit more of those kinds of elements? Give it a little bit more of a visual flair outside of just simply using a lot of flashing colors and particle effects. So overall, I don't think Energy Invasion is a bad game. I mean, for the price, I think it's certainly worth it if you're a fan of Breakout type games. After all, this same developer put out a couple of other energy type games, and this one certainly looks like it's the best of the bunch. So if this is a game that looks like you might enjoy, I highly recommend checking it out. But like I said, if you're not a fan of Breakout type games, this one isn't going to be breaking any new ground, so you can probably give it a pass. But I did have some fun with it, and, you know, it might be fun just to pop in for a few minutes here or there. You know, it's a good game to pick up just for a few minutes at a time. You don't have to invest a whole lot of time into playing this game. So, overall, Energy Invasion, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10 overall. Like I said, the physics and things like that just seem a little bit off, and, you know, I wish there was just more to it, but it is a decent game, you know, it's not bad. It's just kind of a short-lived game, you know, and hey, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you just need a few minutes at a time, right? So if this is the kind of game you're looking for, I do recommend checking it out. And thank you very much for checking out that review. If you guys enjoy this video, don't forget to share this with your friends. Let them know about this game and see if they're interested in it and whatnot. But thanks for tuning in. Until then, Downphoenix out.